The disrespect that I just showed that character. That of all times, this is the best that Rain has ever been in the game. The fact that I just disrespected him like that. You're right. Rain is still the other character in the Greatsword group. 10 billion%. Welcome back and good evening, everybody. Ready Player Will here, back with JB and another podcast for the Leonis Report, episode 36, with a lot of cool stuff to talk about with Winter Raph coming in, all the winter festivities and changes that we're seeing to end the year. And we have a lot of cool announcements in terms of some stuff that we're doing collaboratively over the next week. But for now, quick hello. How's it going, man? How you doing, JB?
I'm doing great. A little bit hectic, in real life in terms of the holiday season. You got to do all the shopping. You got to see all the friends and family, get the cards out, all that jazz. But, in-game, been having fun. We just went into some limited Guild War, some fun new characters came into the game. So, yeah. How about yourself? What have you been up to?
Same. Just those Christmas and holiday party time of year. I did work one on Friday, and I had a little family get together yesterday. We have more next week for Christmas Eve, and we're not as big in doing Christmas around the house because we don't have kids or anything, so it's more just like Nikki and I going at our own pace, and still in the holiday spirit. We got some Yankee swaps we've been going to and stuff, so it's been good, and the game has been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed the last week, kind of the new character, Winter Raph, who we're going to talk about here in just a minute to kick things off. But yeah, limited Guild War is going great. A lot of fun with you guys in Howl at the moment, and we got a really competitive one going tonight. We'll see how it shakes out, but yeah, things are good.
So before we get into the new character, though, I think we have a little announcement in terms of our next episode. So why don't you tell all the eager viewers here?
Definitely. So in the spirit of what JB and I did last year in our actual first collaboration, we had both kind of been behind the scenes talking about doing a 2023, or at that time 2022 year in review, and it's going through a bunch of like top 5 best, top 5 worst, best characters, worst characters, best equipments, literally anything we could possibly think of as just kind of a way to close out the year. And we're going to be doing the same thing, and the big kicker is it's a live stream, and so we'll be doing a live stream next Wednesday, and I believe that date specifically is the 27th. So December 27th, about 9:30 Eastern. 5:30 or 6:30 Pacific. But we'll announce that. We'll put that in chat. We'll get a lead up to you guys. But this will be a fun year to review. Obviously, a ton of changes in the game. And that was a little throwback to our first time working together.
It's been pretty full year in terms of the game, so we're gonna have a lot to talk about. We'll look at the totality of the game, kind of what were the high points. I think everybody knows the lowest points, but we'll talk about those too. And yeah, just have maybe have some festive drinks and have some fun with it. So hope you guys can all join us to kind of end the year on a good note.
Definitely so. That's one of my favorite things. It's a fun way to just shoot the breeze and have some fun with the just the game more casually. So in the meantime, though, we do have some exciting stuff. And real quick, the topic of lineups today, we're going to go through Winter Raph, both her and her Vision card. We're going to talk about the winter units, their 140s, their limit break upgrades, just some general thoughts on hopes that we might have or specific things we want to point out. We'll talk about the manual battle tournament that just occurred this last weekend, and congrats to Woodstock for taking it there. We have a couple new accessories added as part of the holiday in-game, the Winter Tonberry doll and the Reindeer Moogle plushie, and then a little bit of limited Guild War, just some observations from what we've seen on the map and the teams. We have 3 Q&A questions from last week that we'll be carrying forward to edit into this video, so you'll see kind of a weird cut. But then we have 2 more questions after that too, so we got some fun Q&A that we'll be going over. And that's really it. So Winter Raph, we knew it was like a lightning mace coming into the game, but we didn't know exactly the character build. What are you thinking so far? Where do we start?
I really like the unit. I think with the last few 70 costs, the designers have really been really knocking it out of the park, I think, in terms of the actual value that you're getting for 18K for the units. I think that very nice units for the meta, like in terms of, if you're looking at that moment. Lucio, when he came in, obviously there was a big hole in a lot of the units in terms of their accuracy. He came in and was dominating against, some of those units, still is, very, very solid. Raph is very much in that vein where, of course, we've been getting a lot of very powerful mages over the last few months, and she just comes in and is really able to stand up to them very, very well.
Yep.
One of the better magic cruisers we've ever seen come into the game, probably since Agrius in her heyday, in terms of how stout she is against magic damage. So I went ham on her. I got her very quickly and maxed her out because I was excited to kind of test her mettle against Helena, against Vivi, against Soul, and she lives up to the billing for sure. So how about you? How have your initial thoughts been?
Same. She was kind of the same. We see so much of the magic meta that, her being a limited unit, I did want to take the opportunity. 18K, maybe not exactly my budget, but I got the Hollow Vision card on like the second step, and that was really the kicker for me to be like, yeah, let me just get her now because I didn't spend what I thought I would on the Hollow Vision card. So a little some luck there, but I'll echo what you were saying about the 70 cost units. Yeah, they've been doing a stellar job. I mean, obviously, Shals comes to mind as one. Halloween Lucio is the big de facto, like amazing 70 cost recently. Gurn's back, maybe a little of a miss, but Winter Raph, I have no doubt it's gonna be great. I'm gonna not go with the copium of Griffith being in that conversation. He is not, but as a 70 cost unit, Halloween Lucia, even going back last year, they've done a really good job that they've made these units competitive in non-cost limited formats, which I think to me is the biggest thing I always dinged the 70 cost units for, is that, all right, great, 70 cost unit, but if I can only use them for a couple days every month or two, and that's it, it's just not a really good return on investment. And so to have these units still be important cogs in fighting the top tier teams in the game, obviously is a really nice thing to see. And yeah, she is definitely one of those units where really great anti-magic unit from a variety of metrics, not only just survivability, but what she has for debuffs. She's got some interesting utility in terms of like dispel, and the list goes on. I mean, obviously I've done the character review, and I know you've done a deep dive too already. That yeah, 2 thumbs up for sure.
And piggybacking on your point there, in terms of the 70 costs, I feel like they went through a period where, very much like now, they were very, very strong. You think back to like Halloween, Little Leela.
Yes.
Then Sakura came, a month or two later. Also very, very powerful 70 cost.
Yep.
But then we had quite a few duds, I think, for a while that they weren't really super exciting.
I'm bringing up, yeah, it was Charisse, Winter Raviesse was a flash in the pan. Sweetheart Miranda really did nothing. I've still never really seen her. That was really that little blip of time. There were the three of them in a row. Yeah, it didn't feel very good.
I still have some hopes for Grifford, in terms of when Wind finally gets some new units here. Maybe, when the new Veritas of the Wind comes. I'm sure following on his footsteps, we'll see another 100 cost Wind unit from the gacha at some point. It's been a while since they've had, kind of a brand new unit. So, but the other nice thing about Winter Raph is that she's Lightning's first 70 cost unit ever.
Yep.
So that was the only element in the game that didn't have one yet. Of course, they had the two kind of lame duck 65 costs with Salir and Alim.
Yeah.
Which was just a failed experiment from the get-go. Like, those characters really never amounted to much of anything, and to this day they haven't really gotten the best upgrades, to really make any teams out there in the top PvP games. So
Never.
I'm glad that Lightning finally kind of has their own OP 70 cost, and see what they do next. Are they going to go through the elements again, or are they going to think of something new? We'll have to see.
Definitely. And I think they did a good job designing her, that I think she's balanced. That's one of the toughest things when a character comes into the game, is how much leeway do they give them in the impact. And she's not a perfect unit. Her damage, all things considered, is average. It's not bad, but it's whatever. It's and her utility and a lot of her upside really does have that niche of really being great for anti-magic. Outside of that, she's still a very good 70 cost unit, particularly for like a mono lightning team, but her resistances aren't all there. She doesn't offer the same utility outside of that magic meta. And so there's a lot to be said that they've done a good job kind of towing the edge of making her really, I won't use the word OP, but like making her really staunch against what she's supposed to be doing well, but also not making her too good that she kind of dominates every phase of the game, where sometimes these units come in and they just kind of dominate everything. And I don't think they did it over there.
I mean, as far as I've seen, I know that she's definitely gangbusters against magic. I've been very impressed with how well she holds up against physical damage as well. I know that was one area you were a little bit down on her, but personally, I think that she holds up better than it looks on paper, mostly because of her impenetrable resistances.
Yep.
She's got very, very solid area resistance and unit resistance. So, it's not uncommon in a build to have 40 of each, somewhere in that neighborhood, maybe even a bit more. And then you throw her supplicant buff on top of that for another 20 area resist, and then her AoE mitigation effect as well.
That's a big one.
And when all that stuff is lining up and online, she can shut down physical as well. And then her HP is also not uncommon to see her around 11, 12,000 HP. So I think she's very, very stout across the board, to be honest with you.
Honestly, I'm not surprised by that. It's one of those things where ability wise, I don't see as much. It's really more just a comparison at that point. But you're right, just from a pure numbers perspective, and that's not always the case. Stats don't always lead the way, but she does have enough impenetrable resistances. That 25%, or 35% mitigated damage on the bigger the AoE, that is a significant damage reduction mechanic that you're right against all kinds of damage. Very, very noteworthy. Obviously, I just haven't stress tested against those situations, so I'm speaking more from like a gut feeling than a result. So I'd rather be a little conservative, and that's kind of how I've approached many of my character reviews at this point. Where having our shortened roadmap, I for a long time drank a lot of Kool-Aid on a lot of units when they came out, and I want to be a little more pessimistic when I can be, and just being conservative, if that makes sense.
She does also have that effect on her befuddling spear fall. That's an untranslated effect currently on wotv calc, and that was one thing that I was very interested to test right away on that first day. I made some posts about it on Discord and whatnot. But what it is it's an additional flat 30% magic damage reduction on top of then also debuffing the magic res penetration. It's absolutely insane, like what that does to the enemies, because her magic resistance is also, she's walking in 35%.
I got her 50.
50%.
Yeah.
You got like Bahamut or something on her that she can easily get 50 plus. So
yep.
Very, very strong.
That's exactly right. She's at 35% innately. And yeah, I do typically have the Bahamut, throw that other 15 on. And it's pretty exceptional how high she gets up to that. That's been my team that I've been theory crafting so hard. It's the mono mace team of her and Dagger and Raph, where you get Dagger in the mix too with that spirit penetration reduction as well. And Dagger's kind of that self-sustain in that kit where she got the limit break, she got the AoE Cura, that the two of them together just like absolutely shut down any of that potential magic damage. And Raph goes in there and a little bit of defense and spirit imperils. And overall, that's my arena team this week. That's the one I was stress testing first, and it's performing very well. No doubt because of Winter Raph, which is really the main driver of that.
In terms of like arena and mocking and things like that, it's not uncommon for her to turn around like a 1 versus 2 or a 1 versus 3. I mean, she has a little bit of sustain. I know that her damage isn't what we're used to in terms of like if you compare it to Vivi or Helena. It's not terrible. I mean, it's passable. It's good enough. And she does have the ability to get like a little bit of burst damage as well. She can buff up with her sequential ability to get some additional spirit penetration for a turn. So
yep.
She does have that ability to kind of have occasionally those big burst shots as well. So
yeah,
overall, I'm very happy with her. I think for 18K, she's better than a lot of 100 costs that we've seen this year, being perfectly honest. So
I would agree with that. Yeah,
I think for players that don't invest a lot in the game, this is one that you can consider picking up if you're kind of sick of seeing those mages out there.
Definitely, I would agree with that. And her vision card, I actually had just released a video today about trying to like quantify the value of this vision card. We'll swap over here real quick just to get a closer look at it. So Twinkle Star's Holy Knight is the third of the Mace Agility vision cards. There were some questions that even for Greatsword and Fist, this will be their third agility vision card as well. And again, just recapping, it's the 15% agility, 30% HP, 20% debuff weakening. In dual formats, you get an additional 24% reaction block rate. And then for the bestowed effect, you get 18% magic. And for Raph in particular, and the two other winter units, won't waste time on that, 10 area res and 10% HP. And so, there's a lot of questions on whether or not people should be pulling. Obviously, Holo Vision cards are very expensive at the moment. But I do like this Vision card. I don't know if you've done a deep dive on it or if you pulled it, if you're using it. What do you think?
I did pull this card because I really like to really min-max on guild raid stuff. And this is another 3-hit vision card.
Yep.
It's another 3-hit pierce attack, but it is a magic pierce attack in this case. So I think that if you're interested in the PvE, the guild raid, it does have that on top of also just being a very good card in general in terms of having the agility, the HP, debuff weakening. We just talked about a bunch of vision cards last time, and these were 3 of the effects that we very highly value. So yep. Having them all in one package here is pretty strong.
Definitely, particularly the debuff weakening there on the main slot where theoretically this would be in the slot, so you get that full 20%. One of her buffs is a 50% debuff weakening or 30% debuff weakening to herself and teammates. So this stacks in that team up to 50%. Certainly a huge amount there. To me, this card is about versatility of weaving the mace class in with other classes. The same is kind of true for Greatsword and for Fists. The thing about the agility cards for those teams, almost all of them have no overlap with any other classes on each of them. So sure, you for a mace team, you might already have 2 agility cards, and if you're making a mono mace team, great, you have 2 agility cards, but they don't have the Fist or the Greatsword on here. And so to me, like, I'm really looking for some of the future upside where this being a limited card, we might not see this for a year, right? Like if they wait this long to rerun a winter event. And so in the next year, who knows what they're going to bring out for greatsword users, fist, mace. Like this is one of those cards that you don't want to miss out down the line because it does have all the primary things that you want to see just from like an objective perspective. And I know for lightning in particular, a lot of people that love that element. The future Astrius or Astrius of the Past is coming out shortly here. Obviously, kind of like right down the middle, same element as her. Obviously, has a great synergy here. He does do relatively well against a variety of damage types, inclusive of magic. She'll help him in that regard. But yeah, I like the overlap of a lot of the different groups here.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of job VCs, we're very much transitioning into the era of multi-job synergy, where we're starting to see more overlapped effects of things that we've gotten previously. And what it's doing is it's enabling a suite of jobs that can work together rather than just a singular job or singular element or whatever. So that is very much where Gumi is starting to take those, and we're going to continue to see that for the majority of 2024, I would say, before they move on to something else. So
Yep.
I think Fist and Mace in particular is a very nice synergy that you can pick up with this card, as well as some of the other ones that they've had in the past. So if you've heavily invested into Fist and those couple of jobs, I think that it can up the ante in terms of maybe you want to grab this card, even if you do have the other agility cards already.
Absolutely. And my other one, in terms of considerations why you'd pull, is if you're a big time regular Raph user. We've talked about her and Dialdo are 2 fantastic rainbow tanks that do have a variety of vision cards that they're all on that have all of the attributes you look for. That if that's a unit that you really use all the time, if it's someone that you put reincarnations into during that festival, these mace cards are really the bread and butter of what going to allow her to work as intended, if that makes sense. And so I love it, that aspect of it too, for the regular RAF.
That's a great way to think about it, because I know that with this job cards, a lot of people out there have struggled with, it wasn't as easy as the mono element era in terms of really recognizing immediately which cards you wanted to pull for. But when you have heavily invested into, a centerpiece unit like a RAF, like a Dialdo, like whoever, this is one way you can extend the life and maybe enable new team compositions with these cards and kind of get the most bang for your buck out of those units that you've built up before.
Yep, absolutely agreed. So yeah, obviously a great card for all those reasons we stated statistically, but even for the units themselves, there's a smattering of units on here that I still think have some legs on them in terms of usage. Not even thinking about the future units that obviously will come out as well. But yeah, on the note of talking about winter units, we do have a handful of upgrades here where all the former winter units got limit break upgrades. They all got their 140s. Winter Raviesse got an MA2. So we are going to go through these individually. Hopefully we'll kind of go through them as quickly as we can. I know a lot of times these tend to be a little bit lackluster, and we'll see if that's the case here as well. But yeah, Winter Ramada, we'll kick things off here. Obviously a PvE queen for quite some time here. I heard big thing they gave her another 20 slash res pen. The 20 slash attack is kind of whatever. They kind of gypped her on that one. And the big limit break upgrade here is just basically a change of the shape of the versatility of how it ends up getting used. It also reduces, oh no, it already did that. It reduces the damage 2 times instead of 1 time as a kind of physical barrier. Always been a really great slash and peril, but the big AP reduction is a major thing. That AP of 63 for a long time was an absolute killer. And there is an untranslated effect here that I honestly don't know myself. I don't know if you know much about it.
It's a brand new effect for the game, actually, a very interesting one. It allows her to cancel the opponent's ability to kill barriers. So
whoa, that's sick.
So it's a sealing effect for barrier removal. And the fact that this also does give her that 2-time Mirage barrier as well really synergizes nicely with that. If you have any other units on your team that really rely on those barriers, maybe this is a unit now that you can look at to potentially help you out there. Obviously, they did help out the range on this ability because it was very much like a straight line attack in terms of using it before. So this was actually they finally gave, I feel like, Ramada a potential niche that you could look at her in PvP, where in the past she really hasn't had it. This is a unit that can get like crazy levels of attack as well. Like I've seen with buffs in battle, I've seen her up over 3,000 to be honest, which is
Wow.
crazy. So she can blow people up now, especially with those added penetrations.
That is exceptional. Yeah, she's at 90 defense pen alone on this smaller AoE, 100 defense pen if you have that Truststone passive. This is, yeah, they did a good job with that limit break there to enable her.
So I don't think this is a unit that you go out and pull if you don't have her before, but I think for people who have invested in her in the past, it does, like I said, give you an angle that maybe you can look at her for those limited battles like we have now, and she could potentially add some value for you.
Yeah, I will say, me personally, I don't think any of the winter units here are worth going out and pulling if you don't have them already. It's such a big investment that there's not a return on it, considering everything else that you have to spend. These upgrades are really if you already have them and just need that little bit extra. I can, in good conscience, say that these are units that are worth pulling, even with any of these upgrades.
I mean, in terms of like if you're like a paying player, I did think that that 2K paid select that they had as like the pop-up deal this week. I actually really liked that deal, and for 2K paid, I think that's potentially worth grabbing one of them. Maybe if you liked Raviesse, maybe if you liked one of these other ones for PvE, but the normal banners definitely I 100% agree.
No,
Very
totally.
much
Do you
very
remember
trash.
what they? I remember that one popping up, and I took it just for Mind Sphere's sake. But those units starts at level one, don't they? You still have to accumulate all the 1,600 Mind Spheres, right? Or the shards.
You do, but I think
Yeah.
it was like 1,000 scrolls you got in there as well. Like it was really good bundle for 2K paid,
It was
to
an
be honest.
exceptional bundle. I'll definitely echo that much. But yeah, it's still an expensive build to get 1,600 shards. But hey, that's Winter Ramada. We do have Winter Macherie as well, who is still one of my like low key kind of like favorite artwork designs in the game. I think this is such a great outfit. I
I
wish
agree.
I wish I could have seen more from her early, but I know even for her, yeah, she's had some PVE upside with some of her breaks and whatnot. But jumping ahead, the dream ability they gave her was 15% HP and 20 crit damage. I don't think either of these things do anything for any deficiencies that she had. The limit break up.
She did get the skill upgrade as well to her precision jump.
That's a fantastic. Right. I'm sorry. Thank you for highlighting that. Right. This is an exceptional ability here. We're talking about 7 squares away. It's a dispel all buffs post damage, but still 220% mod. Cast time could be a little faster, but decreased jump kind of niche. But overall, good upgrade. Yeah.
The LB upgrade, it gives her a re-raise there and it enhances the range on it. Also lowers the cost of it, gives her some defense pen. It's actually decent. I don't think it gives her like enough of a niche compared to like Ramada, where that's a very unique ability that they gave. They gave her an all new mechanic. This one, it gives her a bit better damage, gives her a little bit more survivability. So I mean, maybe you could look at her. I don't know. I have always liked kind of I think she has one tracking jump, if I remember correctly. It might actually be that precision jump actually that follows the targets. But yeah, she's kind of a bruiser. She's decent against magic, decent against slash, but very weak against missile
Missile. Huge cap. Oh, strike. Minus
and
20%.
strike.
Yeah, that I remember that once I saw these two negative 20s a while ago, I just kind of put this girl in the graveyard and I'm like, that's can't ever use this.
Yeah, I mean, even like the PvE upside, it's more centered around if you have the 3-hit Pierce card
Correct.
that you can really kind of take advantage of her. So I like this one less than Ramada, if I'm being real.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that. This is definitely, I don't see any upside here. uh, we'll move on to Winter Victoria, who does have a fair amount of copium and a big fan base because for a long time she was arguably the best winter unit that they had released. She's probably not that far off in terms of if you're ranking all the bow units in particular. I know bow is kind of a lost class in terms of how many units they've released there. For her dream ability, they gave her 15 accuracy, which is great. She's actually always been a relatively accurate unit. This helps her do what she does even better. The 20 missile attack, again, modifiers we're relatively down on. I don't think any of those really do a lot, but she's always been a really good defense pen unit. So when you consider that she's already got like enough penetration from the defense pen side, modifiers aren't the worst thing in the world. I know the ability upgrade here. I'm sorry, I do kind
Very
of
good ability upgrade here
yeah,
as well.
the break spread here, where that is a was formerly a missile imperil of 20%, still retains that, but it's also a break of attack and magic. But more than that is the decrease CT 15% on this really nice diamond AoE, an exceptional range height capability there that we've seen with characters like Bridal Elia, how potent this can be. This is a genuinely really great upgrade.
Yeah, I like this quite a bit. The LB upgrade also very, very strong. It enhances the range on the attack by 1, gives her an AoE res imperil of 30%.
Yep.
And then if she actually lands the 67% blind, actually these effects, it's that's incorrect, I think, if in
I
terms of like that the decreased chance of being targeted, but the healing power I think is dependent on the blind landing of 70%. So
yes. Yes,
also
I agree with
lowers
that.
the AP as well by 38, so or by 11. So
Yeah. And special honorable mention, I think everyone forgets this. One of her niches is that she's got some fantastic decrease AP consumption games that you can play with. And I know there's some people that have really leaned into, and we'll spoiler alert this because we're going to talk about it after. But the, what is it, the Moogle plushie? This one is a decrease AP consumption of 15. And I know people have done that with like a TP or an AP set bonus that they've gotten her so that like her skills cost like 75% less, if not like 90%. I've seen some crazy things. I still need to look into exactly how they achieve it, but her AP
I think I saw
management
one. I think I saw one that was 0.
zero.
Or
Yeah.
yeah, she got to 100% AP reduction
Yeah.
through like a TMR buff plus the AP set
Yes.
and all that stuff combines. So
Yeah. Actually
pretty
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah. She's
Which is nice for her because she has always had AP issues, like that really nice break spread skill that we were just looking at, the job 25, still costs 42 AP. So like that's a hefty skill to send out. At least the LB has gone down a little bit. It's now only at 38, but yeah, I think that she's definitely a candidate that, because she does have such excellent accuracy, you don't necessarily need a luck set. She's a range unit, so maybe you don't care about the HP set. So some of those TP or AP sets might look more attractive for her than other units.
Yep. And if I could just hammer something home, that 42 AP is not because of that MA2. That 42 AP is really a 28 AP ability without anything else other than her MA2. Start throwing in all these other things, this gets much, much cheaper, which, again, people that are fans of her, I think she's still got that, like, maybe look devil on your shoulder, give it a shot.
I think she's okay. I mean, I think that she's a prime candidate for a bow tie because, unlike the more recent missile units, she doesn't have the ability to lower her movement for auto.
Nope.
But I think there's a lot to like here. She's an enabler with the multiple imperils here. Maybe can even enable some evade play with the AoE blind as well. Zero survivability for this
None.
unit though. That's the
None.
thing. Like she just gets blown up if anybody gets to her. So you definitely want a tank or some hate on the team to kind of shift the attention away from her. But otherwise, I think that she's decent.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I like what they did. So we'll look at Winter Vinera next. Who, interesting unit. One of the things about Winter Vinera was that she, when upon first release, was one of the few at the time. We'll call them like pseudo tanks in terms of what she was doing with taunting spell on the Spellblade sub. There was kind of a niche for her at that time to kind of take that hate role, particularly for Earth, which was for a very long time tankless. It wasn't until like Miraga came out that everyone was like, whoa, someone can finally like tank for Earth. Like, she was really the only capability to slot in there. That being said, that role has drastically changed. She's really a pure DPS at that point. So that's really how I analyze any of these upgrades. And she got 10 unit res and 10 magic res, and she always was kind of like a niche to be more strong against magic than the other types, just between that and I think what she had capability wise for passives and buffs. But, this is, as the Fist game has gone on, I don't think a good DPS by any metric you could possibly gauge. Um,
I think that if we had gotten her dream upgrade and these upgrades back when we should have, I mean, at this point, the dream upgrade is a year old, in terms of when JP got it in their timeline. This may have been a unit that we could have looked at during the Elia meta, with the unit resistance that she has, and obviously being an Earth unit. She does also come in with some positive strike resistance as well. now that Alaya has kind of faded away from being like the top dog, I'm not seeing it as much because, maybe you could think about putting her up against some of the mages because she does have a little bit of magic resistance, but all the mages that have come out have very high strike and unit resistance, which is really all that she can do. So
Yep,
even that, I mean, she has like really no AoE attacks. I don't, maybe just one in the kits.
super limited.
So
Yeah.
yeah, she is, so like the strike resistance is just going to completely shut her down. She really maybe needs 20% strike res penetration, and then maybe she, you could have looked at her. So I think she kind of just retains her mostly, her value in terms of like PVE stuff. She's always been able to have a 3-hit dream within a dream, and then her barrel has been always been good for guild raids.
Right. So I'll before we get to that in peril, just real quick, the upgrade to the ability. It was a defense break. It's still a defense break. It was 70 power down. It's still 70 power down. It's really a range upgrade that it got here. That sure, that's nice. That's a
Something that she really needed. I
that
mean,
right. That's a sizable upgrade, but in terms of not touching the rest of the ability, kind of a loss there. I would have liked to see something else on there, but the limit break again for PVE content has always been a good one for that 38% Earth and Peril, at least pre Oberyn, who kind of came in there. I know Macherie, Queen Macherie has some that overlap too. This one, uh, it's a chance to blind. That's nice, and this one is kind of nice that it's a strike in peril of 15. We saw something similar with Gurn's back in terms of applying that on her own hit. But man, like again, you talk about very short range, only 3 squares away. 29 AP is a nice decrease, but by the time you're using this and getting that imperil off, like she's either dead or your fight is going sideways.
yeah, it's. I mean, she does also have the Spellblade 70% barrier as well as resist magic. Maybe you could do something to play around with her if you already have the unit, but again, not a unit that I would invest into at this point by any means.
We're getting close to these last two here. Winter Luartha, who did have her time in the sun for a while. There was a month or two there where it really did shine. She's not stood up the durability test of time, where that glass cannon just ended up not being viable. For the dream upgrade they gave her, it's 30 accuracy, which she did have that niche for a while. She'd had a really nice accuracy buff for teammates. I think that was her big TP here, that you'd get 30 accuracy. So nice that they're still leaning into that. The upgraded javelin fall, which is their other kind of like main ability here, and it is an AP, or it was an AP auto restore. They changed the targeting system again. So all things considered, like I still don't know if that's enough. It's kind of similar to Winter Vinera there, that they didn't touch the ability whatsoever. They just ended up giving this extra versatility, which is a good upgrade. I don't think enough to move the needle though. And obviously the limit break, we can talk about that too here.
I mean, in terms of the main abilities, like she was outside of binding javelin, she was really limited to like the straight line patterns. So it's nice that this does give her that versatility, and especially on attack that has a 30 defense break. I'm really disappointed though with that dream ability. I think this is where they really did a disservice for this character. She was already very, very accurate. This really just kind of cements her as being kind of an evade hunter. She can be very hyper accurate, but no survivability at all added in, which was really, I think, one of the main things that was keeping her out at this point.
Just the fact they gave her one thing
Yeah.
instead of like you couldn't throw in 20 pierce attack. You know what I mean? Like for as much as we don't even value that modifier, they couldn't even give her that minimum. Dude, it's kind of sad.
Yeah. She needed another like 10 AoE resistance added in there as well, I think.
Definitely. So her limit break here, it's a range extension where it went from 3 to 4. It's an AP reduction. It went from 49 to 34. It still brings that Pierce Imperil, which is certainly nice. We like to see that. It is a damage absorption, which fair. That probably does restore a lot of her health bar. If you're playing with fire, considering how squishy she is, it does technically give her a HP barrier, which certainly does help some of that survivability and the AP restore. So this is a good limit break upgrade. Just it's tough to see her used. I don't see it.
Yeah, so they did try to address the survivability here with the limit burst upgrade, with, like you said, the absorption. And then we were actually supposed to see the first general HP barrier on Eld. That was kind of his 5,000 HP barrier. Now Luartha is actually getting it first here in global. But so far, we've only seen magic or physical HP barriers. This is our first one that will be good for both. I really don't like that they have doubled up on the AP restore here as well. I mean, granted, AP restore is nice, but she already had that on the job 25 that they upgraded. I don't see why they couldn't have just added more survivability here instead of that duplicate effect.
Agreed. Yep. So low hopes. Bottom line.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
because she's one of the newer ones.
Exactly. Exactly. Which does bring us to our second newest of the winter units, which was Winter Raviesse, who we were supposed to get at least an MA, or well, no, we were supposed to get the 140 forever ago, where we just missed the JP time on there. But this week she got both the MA2 and the Dream ability. So for that MA2, they gave her 10 AoE res and 20 decreased AP consumption. I always like this one. Obviously, cheaper skills certainly is nice. Also gave her 20 defense, which not my favorite. That's,
Very whatever.
you look at whatever. 15 unit res though, certainly very, very nice to see. And that ability upgrade for Great Guillotine, it's her Dispel Courage ability. It's also a Restore AP to self. So like they're kind of combining that decreased AP cost with the Restore AP here, trying to keep some of her uptime up. But I honestly never really thought of that as a big problem for her because she's such a short range character that if you're looking at these abilities, 4 squares away, two, like by the time that you're actually in range of your enemies, you're probably buffed like 2 or 3 times. And I never really thought of that AP issue with her, considering how often she was buffing, or at least how often you could maybe weave a TMR in there for that AP reason. So I like the attempt, but I don't know if it really does a lot for it.
Yeah, I mean it's like a nice to have perk. I think that's probably wasn't the first thing that she needed in terms of her skills. The defense is very much whatever at this point, especially when you don't have within your kit a way to remove like lower the defense penetration of the enemy.
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of the LB, it's actually a pretty nice upgrade, I think. Again, lowering the AP cost of it turns it into a diamond AoE.
Huge.
And it's up to range 6 too, so it's an extended
Oh,
diamond.
that's much further than I thought. That kind of changes what I was saying a second ago. Okay.
Yeah, so she's getting a big increase in her range. Yeah, I think she topped out at range 5 before with the old LB. So she's
Yes.
getting, but now she's kind of like an AP destroyer. She's still getting that chance to frostbite, but also weaving in the removal of 20 AP flat when she hits, and then she's increasing her damage there by 20%. So pretty decent LB upgrade, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I remember her not being a terribly bad unit when she was initially released. Again, it was mostly limited stuff that I ended up using her in, but there was still enough here in terms of like she had that 50% barrier, which kind of fell from grace for a time there with Bradley and Seth, but now obviously is back to viability. She's always had this great like Pierce res niche, and even her vision card brought some of that Pierce res where never really needed it, never really came to fruition. But we have Eld coming out here in a couple of weeks. Like there might be a resurgence in Pierce. Like she's one of the few that I kind of consider there. She had a nice AoE barrier break, which again at that time was very rare. Sorrow came out and was the only like AoE barrier breaker at the time. And I remember like Halloween Lucia in that matchup. Winter Raviesse was actually a really good unit for that matchup because of the AoE barrier break potential. Not as special anymore, but still nice. Yeah, it's okay.
I think you could maybe do some interesting like AP reduction strategies if you think about maybe pairing her with an Alaya and using like that monocle. And Alaya, of course, also has access to frostbite as well. So I don't know. It kind of fits in a little bit with what Ice likes to do. Again, though, I don't. Out of all the winter units, I don't think it's my favorite one, but I think it's decent enough.
I agree. And honestly, the kicker for me, that's the glass half full, a 70 cost unit. Like, all things considered, 70 cost, not the worst in the world. 10 AoE res, 15 unit res, the frostbite. She's got above average defense pen here to start. Like, it could be worse. All right, and then on that note, we do have a couple other limit break upgrades, some that we didn't get to talk about last week. So we do want to go through those quickly. The ones from last week were Whispers, who I'll kick off with because that's my girl. That's what I recently max reincarnated. This is actually a really great limit break upgrade. Doesn't do anything really though for her results. I've tried to use her here in limited guild war and it's okay. It's really not good. It's a good limit break upgrade where it's absorbs some damage, which she actually does decent enough damage to absorb something there. I do like the bravery decrease so that against physical enemies, that's a damage reduction, so she doesn't take as much damage. The decrease in slash attack res pen and magic attack res pen is actually kind of nice, considering she's very much based around these penetratable resistances. So I like this, but the rest of everything is just kind of whatever. It's good limit break, but
I think the one miss for me on this is the range on it. I think that I really wish they had made it more of a versatile attack
Yeah.
than just the single range.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most of her other range is still pretty short. She'll typically still open with protection break, which I don't hate because again, you're talking that's her chance to be targeted. It's a break here as well, so I do like that. Quadra break is her other big one here, where that's less modifier but is an increase in slash res pen. So I've seen her use this limit break fairly often, but it's like when the battle's about to end. Do you know what I mean? It's just a little bit too late.
And she's one of the original 70 cost units too.
Yeah, yeah, just not working well. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens, but we'll keep moving along here because we just look at some good Q&A to get into. But the Jaden one here is a very good limit break. I don't know if you want to go over this one at all here for what he ended up getting.
Yeah, so right off the bat, this one extends the range on it, so he gets an additional range here. Still's going to still will break the magic barrier prior to damage. It's always been a nice aspect to it. Now he's getting in peril here of minus 38% unit resistance, which is very, very solid.
Pre-damage.
Pre-damage, yeah. So really up in the ante on his damage potential. He's never had any imperils or breaks before. He does also get a re-raise effect added, and he gets a unit resistance buff while that re-raise is online. So very, very solid upgrade here for Jaden. This is one that I did upgrade as soon as it was released, and I did try to play around with them a little bit in that Helena team. That's kind of the light magic team that's been going on. Had kind of mixed results. I think the one kind of issue with this LB is that it's a straight line attack, and he does have access to arcing shots, so it's not going to be the first one that he looks to use unless he's on a flat plane and can kind of line it up. Otherwise, I think it's a pretty solid upgrade for him.
Yeah, it's hard for me to judge the quality of the character still because it's very map dependent, being a missile unit alone. But just from a limit break perspective, this is exceptional. I love what they did with this. That's all I have to say.
Definitely.
Yep. And then Glaciella, flag bearer, the unit who keeps on giving. This was quite a substantial limit break. This is honestly a limit break that for auto PvP at the top end of the game we turned off forever because it really just wasn't as good as her triple hit that removed the courage and had that extra hit chance. Now we have a reason to turn it back on. Not only does it extend the elemental chain, which certainly is nice for the extending the damage upside, but I'll save best for last. She gets some AP auto restore. That's definitely very appreciated. But she gives herself courage, and that is substantial when you consider that like Sidali can give her re-raise. I know that Lena can also give her re-raise in that win team. So you're talking about a unit that now can give herself courage and have external re-raise with all the bulk on the AoE side. This is a stellar upgrade.
Yeah, she's definitely, if she didn't already have the raid boss status, she's got it now. One of the main reasons that you would also turn off that LB is it totally killed her AP.
Correct.
And this now not only lowering the cost of it, but giving the AP restore. It's a very, very nice upgrade for kind of a targeting some of her main weaknesses too. So really like it.
Definitely. And unappreciated upside, I just talked about Lena in that team. My win team this last week, I know the same for yours, putting her alongside Zidane, who has Courage Seal. So now she can give herself courage. If you have a Zidane that can seal the enemy courage removal, this limit break just gets even better from that regard.
Love it.
Yep. And then we do have some new limit break upgrades this week for the Warrior of the Crystals. We got Joom, we have Cetia, and we have Velis. We'll kick things off here with Joom, who we've said a handful of times has very much been power crept as a tank. She's been more of like a damage dealer at this point than a tank, just from how much like slash res pen and defense pen and attack stat they've given her. The limit break upgrade here does kind of get her back to her roots though, where it is still very, very short range here, kind of similar to that Vigo limit break, and I know like Howlet has an ability. I don't love this targeting range. I actually wish they changed this just a little bit here, but it's significantly cheaper at 33. It's a barrier break AoE. It's decreased AP consumption, which again kind of feeds into that like spam damage uptime. But more than anything, it's not only damage absorption for 3 turns, but the biggest thing is the Glaciella effect, that this is a reduction of physical damage whenever an ally is within range, 40% damage reduction in a pretty large 4-square targeting radius. And this is an enormous upgrade for that alone.
Yeah, this one, if you think about kind of her rotation, most of the time, I mean, she can maybe pull off 2 buffs, but even if she's only pulling off 1 buff, she's going to be able to lead off with her Stormwind Rend. And then with this now being 33 AP, she's going to have enough after that to then go in and use her LB and then start protecting the team with that physical damage reduction. I think as of right now, it's not quite as exciting because we're kind of in a magic meta at the moment for the most part. But you know, if you are finding those physical matchups out there, I think this is you know, similar to King Mon, similar to Glassy. It's a very, very strong effect. I do like that it's now a barrier break as well. That has always been an issue, I think, for Glassy. If you've paired her with Choom, she does have that kind of really weak barrier break on Trick Lancer that she doesn't often able to get off just because of the weak targeting radius. So this being an AoE barrier break, I think, is also helpful for that core duo.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. I love it, and just is more opportunities for her to use it from a damage perspective. That it'll help the damage formula so that you can prioritize it as opposed to, she's got a unit in peril here. Obviously, Stormwind Ren with the guaranteed hit allows for a lot of extra damage to come out. So that definitely ensures it for sure. So we'll look at Cetia's next, and her limit break upgrade. She always had a half decent one from the fire imperil perspective. This got substantially better though. This is now still that 38% imperil. I do believe it was a range increase as well here, where now you're talking, what, 5 squares away? 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 squares away, plus or minus whatever additional range you've given her. So it's at 38% apparel and a general dispel. Looks like they nerfed the damage, if I'm like reading this correctly, but it's the subtext here, the increase of modifier depending on how many enemies are in the AoE. I don't know if I love that part of it.
So I mean, if you're hitting one target, it's still going to be the 200% imperil, but if you
Okay,
catch 2, it's 225, and then if you catch 3, it goes up to 250.
thank you.
So
That makes total sense now. And then it's the AP restore, which I do like because AP self sustain has been a big part of her like MA2 here and her dream ability here, where even the MA2 here was an increase of AP for critical hits. They obviously gave her a bunch of extra crit damage, so I like that they kind of fed into that concept here by giving her the AP restore to help doing so. I like the upgrade.
yeah, this is a very solid one. AP has always historically been one of her issues as well, and they've gradually kind of tried to patch that in with their various upgrades. This certainly helps out, you know, especially when, again, just like Luartha and some of the others we've looked at, when they combo it with the reduced cost and the AP restore, it's very, very nice.
Yeah, so we'll go on for that. We have Velas, then we do have a couple other topics to get to. But Velas, this has always been realistically a great limit break already. The 100% hit chance, it's the 50% physical barrier for himself. This one, he's getting a decrease of AoE res of 38. That's a substantial damage, increase for not only his future, like let's say Blizzaga spells, but obviously just for teammates in general. It does dispel all debuffs, which is a great survivability metric. It also has these untranslated effects, which I unfortunately don't know. Have you heard of these?
This is one that I don't know myself either. I'm going to need to look that up. But yeah,
If I
the mystery continues.
the mystery, but you know what though, because there's two of them here, I would tend to think it's something like a almost like an AOE mitigation. Like the bigger it is, like or like one is for physical, one is for magical. That's usually when I see these double lines here. Is usually when they separate one into physical, one into magical.
That would be pretty nice if it was increasing that. But usually, like the pre-damage stuff is more like damage oriented, and then they put the buffs afterwards. So I don't know. I can see that though. That would certainly be a nice upgrade for
Yeah.
him.
Well, we'll follow up. Maybe we can throw in the edit when we figure out what the heck it is.
Yeah. It does
But
also change the barrier that he gets though from a
oh,
physical to a general.
I'm glad you pointed that out. That's a nice big upgrade for him. Yep.
Nice. I mean, this one is his only guaranteed hit that he has. So being able to now add the 38% imperil on top of that, it's going to really be able to blow people up with this one. Pretty nice.
Definitely. Well, that's all we had for the character updates. I know there's a lot to go in there, but these are a lot of units that people have been waiting for, and we've kind of memed on them, so wanted to give them the proper attention and shut them down with as thorough of an analysis as we possibly could provide. But
You
yeah,
think that's going to bring Velis back or Cetia back?
uh,
You,
uh,
any of these units?
Velas, I never think has gone away. I still see Velas used. I think he still works decently well. I've been using Velas in Arena last week with Black Rose, Helena, and Vivi because the book overlaps with the Vivi Vision card. That I've been using him to haste both of them and just pocket the shit out of them, and like it works great. So I still think Velas works well. Element break
I think
definitely.
that now that we're kind of getting a bit out of the unit resist meta and we're back into an AoE res meta, he can start coming back again. But he was having a rough go of it there for a few months.
He was. And CTI, I don't know, man. She's in that missile conversation. Like, how good can they really be? She's probably one of the better ones still, but how good can you really be? Like, I don't have high hopes.
June, I think if we're going to be transitioning into any kind of a Pierce meta, maybe she can start coming back out again. She has always had very strong Pierce resistance, and then you add in the physical barrier effects. Now she can start to truly kind of impact her team in a better way than she has before. So we'll have to see what comes to pass there with the spear damage group.
Agreed. And I'll very quickly just give a shout out. My biggest hope and copium for June is on the Great Sword, where if you look at this cast of units, she is the only like true tank within this class. You have a lot of bruisers, but not a true tank. So I've always had this like secret hope in the back of my head that like they give her some upgrades enough that when you create a greatsword team, either mono greatsword or a overlapping greatsword, she can be a centerpiece of it. I don't think she's there yet. It's very much niche, but she's one of the only ones here. So what can I do?
Do have Rain on there, but of course he's always more of a
Boy,
magic
the
kind of
the
guy.
disrespect that I just showed that character, that of all times, this is the best that Rain has ever been in the game. The fact that I just disrespected him like that. You're right. Rain is still the other character in the Greatsword group. 10 billion%. Yes.
Waiting for the awakened version.
Yes. Oh my god. Yes. He'll be coming someday. But yeah, we have a couple of other things here. I know we still have a lot to talk about, so we'll go through them kind of quickly. But for now, we have the manual battle tournament that ended. Woodstock wins one. He's a personal friend. I know he and I have been talking forever on the Discord. I'm sure you guys too on your Discord server. Any thoughts on that manual tournament or what came out of it?
So it was a little interesting that the format of it. There was only 3 players involved. I know that there was. I won't get into the issues behind that, but I was a little bit puzzled why they didn't bring in maybe one of the other semifinalists and bring it back to a square 4 people and kind of go through the normal kind of bracket that we were expecting to see. That said, I mean the round robin was kind of interesting. It kind of added a new development. Was a little bit disappointed in kind of the casting, not so much in the play by play, but just in the overall experience. So hopefully that's something that going into next year they can think about and maybe retool it a little bit. We'll see what happens. But definitely congrats to Woody. It's I've known him for years now on the server. We've had a long history and rivalry in terms of playing. But yeah, big kudos to him. He's a former CM #1. Now he's the top manual player for the tournament. So big congrats.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, I was not able to watch that tournament. I did go back and watch a couple of clips because, again, he's a friend of mine, so I wanted to go back and watch some of his fights. It's a long live stream; it's still over 5 hours, despite the fact there was only 3 contestants, if you will. But still, I like that fact that Gumi is giving Manuel the same dedication that Auto PvP gets. I know often goes under the radar for a whole bunch of reasons. It's a seemingly complex topic that's really not as complex. I think people overhype the problems with manual, and so I like that Gumi is still giving it the forefront that it deserves, so that people can still know that it's there and have that itch to engage in it.
Yeah, I really hope that they saw enough promise and engagement from it that they'll continue it next year. Hopefully, they continue the whole experience. But if they do, definitely hope Manuel is there as well.
Definitely. And so a couple things here to finish things off here. We do have the new items added to the game as part of like the mini Tonberry or like the mini marshmallow, Christmas marshmallow effect. These are fun items. They're not amazing items. They're fun items though. So the reindeer Moogle plushie, 12 defense, 22 dex, 25 crit evade. The crit evade is actually kind of nice, to be honest. That kind of pops out. But for the winter units in particular, that's that decreased AP consumption. That's part of the meme Viktora builds that we're talking about. 8 unit res is fine. I like it. 30 evocation gauge is definitely whatever. I've never seen that actually come to fruition. But I'm thinking of this from a PvE perspective, where you talk about units like Winter, Ramada. I know we were talking about like some of these other ones for PvE utilization. That when you talk about the AP consumption for them to maintain that PvE damage upside and that extra evocation boost, I like this item a lot.
I think that this overall as a package has a lot of stats that you don't typically see on gear that we get in the game. If you think about like a flat dex, a bunch of crit evade. That's sometimes shows up, but I'd say it's a bit more rare. Also getting the unit resistance and the AP consumption, all of these things, you don't typically see on gear. And I think especially that AP angle, it can help in PvE and PvP. A lot of these older units, they didn't have as good AP management. And, we just talked about the upgrades. That was one of the areas that Gumi tried to address with a lot of them. So just kind of compounds and you can kind of get them into a healthier spot in terms of stringing out attacks. But I 100% agree. This is something that probably will hold a bit more value from a PvE perspective.
Definitely. And the Winter Tonberry doll, conversely, has 25 luck on it, 23 crit rate, so a little more on the magic oriented side. But I mean, you can equip this on anyone. That stat is really irrelevant. But this one, kind of the same idea. I do see it for some PvE stuff. This max damage of 2000 is for all units that equip it, not just the holiday winter units. But for those winter units, they do get crit damage and initial AP, which can scale well with PvE stuff. They also obviously do scale well with PvP content. But that max damage really sticks out. We'll follow back on this topic soon for the Q&A, but I like this item too.
Yeah, that max damage is premium because there's really only I think one item in the game that gives 2000 currently, which is the Genji glove.
Yes.
There might be maybe there's one or two others.
I know,
it's very very rare.
I know there's a vision card that gives the unit extra max damage, but I don't know about equipment. I
Yeah.
think the Genji glove might be one of the few.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we've always had the 1000 passive that you can get from Trust Stones and on
Right.
some of the equipment as well. And then I know that there's a TMR glove that can do 1500, but yeah, 2000 is rare. That's very very strong, especially when you think about a couple of those characters in particular, Luartha, Ramada, Vinera, very solid guild raid units.
Definitely. So yes, we have those two items. We will talk briefly about limited guild war. I know you and I are currently, fighting for our lives against Salt City. I like what they did in splitting up the elements. That's still one of my favorite setups, quite honestly, because it takes away all the counter element play. Really allows these teams to compete as objectively as possible without some of those X factors. The cost 260, I think, is kind of nice too. I do like the cost limitations. All things considered, I'm very happy with this. The map is not my favorite map, but that being said, it is cool to throw an X factor of a map like this in there where you just have to like theory craft differently. So I don't hate it. I just kind of hate it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite map either. You have the one slot that's kind of on its own island, and it's kind of a very wide map, but not very far across. So yeah, I mean, it kind of leans into like rush strategies and kind of trying to catch people off guard potentially. Not a very good missile map for the most part, though. I know that's you said in the past it has been.
Yeah,
But
two
yeah,
2 years ago, maybe.
I I 100% agree though that I really like the split element setup. It's definitely one of mine too because when you eliminate that hard element counterplay, you can really get I think a bit more creative in terms of seeing some teams that you might not normally see.
Yep. Well, not to mention too, I just like it from the gearing perspective too, where oftentimes you have to compensate for the weakness by having like a certain element ring on, and then obviously you have your trust stones, maybe like it cramps your building capabilities. And here you don't have to worry about that at all. You just build to your heart's content to make the best team possible. So yeah, we'll probably cover more of that next week once we kind of wrap things up. You and I have done enough testing, but again, it's only for these few select elements at the moment. We'll obviously have more results and probably do some, live PvP next week. Maybe we'll try to do a match. But in the meantime, we're going to cut the video here to insert our 3 questions that we answered last week that we ran out of time with. And so I'll let you do the magic on editing that. All right, so our first Q&A here, and this might have been stimulated from our Helena showcase last week where I was talking about turning off our unit affinity to get the agility tuning right. So I think that stimulated this question. How huge of a difference is turning off unit affinity for movement and buff application? So this person mentioned a difficulty they've had with Soul and Shells. From what they're describing here, I don't think unit affinity will help them with Soul and Shells. That seems like an AI thing and an agility tuning thing, not a unit affinity thing. But we'll kick things off here. Have you noticed any differences here by turning off unit affinity? Have you done that with any of your teams actively?
Yes, I'd say more so on specific units. So I think where you can really harness it is you need to understand which units are actually using that dexterity affinity as part of their damage calculation. And I think that comes in most often with ranged classes. A lot of the more recent, like damage dealers, they'll go fully scaled on attack or magic. But, every once in a while there is, dex and agility thrown in, which, are going to be those affinity stats that, if another unit is in range and they have affinity, they're going to walk over to them to get that bonus because it's going to do 5 more damage or 6 or whatever the menial amount of damage it ends up being. It is more damage, so the AI is going to take, excuse me, take that play. I know that one sort of pro tip we've have oftentimes turned off affinity on Raph in particular because her AI does use agility and dexterity in the damage calculation. So she's going to move over to your damage dealers and bring them into AoE range, which you may not want. So
I'm so glad you brought that up as your point because you're right. For the damage calculation formula, for those who need a refresher, go watch the video I just posted. You're right. It takes in a lot of those unit affinity calcs into maximizing your damage. So it will like magnets, bring them together so they amplifying that. Other times, or my approach to this is actually a completely different one. And it's specifically more about the turn order, which I have only done a couple times. I think for the average player, this is above what you normally would do. I think this is only when you're really theory crafting hard, min-maxing strong. At the peak of the Elia meta, Bridal Elia meta, not the ice one, the Bridal Elia, one of the things we found was if you turn off unit affinity, your starting agility value is still the same as it always will be. Unit affinity has nothing to do with your starting agility value. So from a turn order perspective, you can still guarantee your initial first turn movement. What we were finding in mirror matchups with Bridal Elia was that the slower Bridal Elia actually ended up winning like 80% of the fights. And you would make your Bridal Elia slower by turning off unit affinity. So you would still maintain your first turn movement, but as like the ticks went on throughout the fight and you accumulated agility values, your Bridal Elia would end up sticking back an extra turn or two. Because what would happen otherwise is the fastest Elia would end up frontlining, and then she get the courage pop, and then she die a lot faster. And so we kind of realized this. Props to Quistis, again, leader of VIP, coached Odaiba to the finals here. Found this, and I've tried to find wrinkles in it, even now for like turn order, how to slow down certain characters, and you just saw that in the Helena showcase last week, where just turning off unit affinity was able to maintain the buff order to start, but slowed her down that you could get other stuff happening. So probably more technical than the average player can lean into, but highly valuable.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you have full affinity with another unit that is 15% agility bonus, which, for most units, that's going to be like 9, maybe 8 or 9 agility, depending on their base value.
Just for context, that's a vision card. We talk about agility on the main slot vision card. That's 15% agility. The unit affinity is literally as equal of importance as that main slot vision card. That's how impactful it is.
And then if you bring a second unit in there, now they have 30% agility, right? So yeah, it really adds up.
Yep, absolutely.
Another back to my original point real quick before we move on. Another instance I've really used it in terms of like trying to manipulate their damage calculations is for ranged units. We've talked about it before in the past, but those missile units, if you don't want them to continually move up towards the front lines, turn off affinity so they won't be looking to pull that into their damage.
Yep. 100%. That's the best application as far as I know, but you bring up a really good point with the tank too. You do not want your tank. I mean, maybe you do. Maybe you want AoE attacks. So that's a strat, but if not, that's...
Yeah. So like for a unit like Glaciella that has the aura effect, or like a King Mont or these units, it's perfectly fine for them. Like for Raph who doesn't, maybe you want to turn it off.
Yep. Great call out there. This next question, I think, was also inspired by our showcase where I was using Bowtie and a couple of our builds there for, how you dictate aggro, who gets buffed first, who has the hate, and then limiting their movement for how quickly they engage. This question is, Bowtie is one of the most interesting pieces of gear in the game. Facts. Because of what it does for AI manipulation with both hate up and move down. How would you guys design another unique accessory with AI implications? And this person brought up a suggestion, maybe having a gear that would reduce your ability range by 1. I think that was really interesting. But anything come to mind for you for what you might think of for AI manipulation?
I'd say like one of the biggest ones that we've seen, come in like that sort of, side by side with the bow tie is that tourmaline ring. Something that we've talked about it. I think maybe even last week. Obviously, that gives you the jump capability. I would like to see like an innate move capability too, a +1 move. Obviously, that's very powerful, especially on certain units. Maybe you can think about them maybe getting 6 or 7 move with buffs. But, I think it would, if they gave it some other negative points like the bow tie has, maybe they could balance it in a way that there are some trade-offs to using it.
I like that. I like that. I actually like this person's suggestion too that you would reduce the range of all your stuff by one. There's certain characters you talk about that might get baited early if you don't want them to. Helena comes to mind. That this would be a really valuable thing to throw in as a wrinkle. I know I've appreciated a little bit the Balo phone recently, where how it prevents protect and shell in a couple things, because I know that's, for instance, Addison has that protect buff. If someone's wearing Balo phone, she won't use that on them first. I would love to see an accessory that has something to the effect of like no teammate buffs apply. Something to that effect that makes your AI never go to that character to buff them. So for instance, if you had a tank and you don't want your character to move to the tank, you want them to move the other character, you'd put this on your tank to cut out that hate part of the equation that a character would never move to them to buff them because that character receives no teammate buffs. Like that's a pretty double-edged sword. The fact that you would never receive, like, for I would imagine for like sequenced aura effects, maybe they don't get the buff of like the attack up that Faris gives or something to that effect. Like I feel like it's some good trade-off there.
So that's a really good idea. Maybe not specifically for AI manipulation, but kind of on the same train where we're thinking of like effects on items. I would really like to see like an innate regen on an item where for the first 3 turns or 4 turns or whatever, you just walk in and you have regen on. I feel like that would be like a pretty valuable thing to like put on a tank or somebody that's going to take early damage.
I like the concept, but as recently fully max reincarnating my Whisper, who's got regen, that don't really do much for us. So I don't know how strong the effect of that ends up being.
I don't know. I have seen some builds where Raph and Glacial are getting up to 20,000 HP right now. So
that's a good point. That's a good point. I like that. That is a creative one. And our last Q&A question is a pretty simple one. Do you think Strike is dead? I'll leave the ball in your court to start for this one if you want.
I'd say Strike is dead as defense, as like a daily driver defense for top 50 play right now. Maybe certainly top 25. I would say that it's dead. And that's simply because ever since Alaya came out, they've been searching for ways to drive her out of the meta because she was way too strong. And they came up with Soul, they came up with Helena, they came up with Vivi, Melnia, all these units that are excellent at killing her. And the thing is, before Alaya came into the game, Strike was already dead as Raph killed it. Right? Yep. I mean, at least, for in terms of like, top end, high end play. Raph is incredible against strike damage. The Great Demon card amplifies her and the team against it as well. So I think that Strike is in a rough spot right now. Of course, certain matchups, Strike is excellent still. I think Strike is still great against the win teams out there. Strike can still be very good against several other, elements and team permutations. But what we saw in that, pocket of time when Alaya first came out for that month or so, that's not coming back anytime soon.
No, it's not. I'll agree with you on that. But I think to literally answer the question, no, I don't think Strike is dead. I think as long as the game is in balance with what the meta units are using for attack types, you're going to get the pendulum swing. When Alaya was dominating everything, yeah, you were getting people maxing their strike attack in every way, shape, and possible form. Even your Soul was getting absolute strike resistance up the wazoo. Every tank had strike res on their Esper nodes. Now that we're in a magic meta, and now that we're going to be entering a slight Pierce meta, I would imagine, in the next month or so, not even talking about the winter unit, you're getting that triangle of balance. You can only resist against so many things. And so to that extent, I don't think you're going to see the same, like, everyone gearing for strike res as you might have used to. We didn't even talk about this. Good lord, we didn't even talk about this. Perrine got her MA2 this week. Screw it. Let's talk about it. One of the big downsides with Strike is that innately there was really no penetration for strike damage in the game. And Perrine got 30 strike res pen on her MA2. You throw in another 10% with a Trust Stone, 40 strike res pen is certainly fine. Alaya's at 40, if not 60 with her weapon. The rest of the strike units, yeah, probably having a hard time. Ed might be having a hard time. Then again, Ed's still a great character. Alphonse Elric, definitely having a tough time. Snow, tough time. And so those units, Snow's not getting an upgrade again soon. That Pixel Massacre already came by. Full Metal units aren't getting an upgrade soon. Collabs take forever to get an upgrade. So a lot of those strike units that were driving the meta have fallen off, but I don't think Strike is dead. I think those units that drove the meta are slightly dead. But Perrine, Brad, and Alaya, I think they're fine. I think they're still very viable.
They're definitely viable. I just think that, it's kind of hard to play them against this magic meta at the moment.
That's fair too.
Um,
Yeah.
so like until maybe Spear comes in and has people put away some of those units, then like you said, that triangle then opens up and maybe they become a little bit easier to play. Although, I mean, I've been seeing people use Perrine all along in that crazy water team with Ferris and Glaciella. So, especially with that MA2 boosting her up, maybe people are going to continue to roll with that.
Yeah. And honestly, I might be being a little anecdotal here. Like 3 days ago, this is kind of my experience with this Guild War. I'm in rank 50. I'm with Hydra, right? Like nothing. This isn't not even top end per se. I'm running an ice team with Grifford, Jaden, and Velis, mono ice. And I attack a team who I know is a bait team. It's Bridal Elia, showing lightning, and they had wind units, assuming that someone would attack them with mono earth. And boom, you have Ed Elric, and you have I can't remember what the other wind unit was. I lost my three ice units into this two wind and Bridal Elia, which was 2 out of 3 strike units. Grifford's a great anti-strike unit. I had the healing for Velis. Velis got one shot still by Bridal Elia. Like it still happened. So that's where I say like the pendulum has swung because I made that ice team not to counter strike. I made that ice team to like counter variety things. And if you're not going full in on it, like it still has legs.
Yeah, Elias still hurts for sure.
Maybe she's the exception. She's probably the exception. So those are the 3 Q&A from last week. But the next question we have up here is about max damage limits, which we were just talking about a little while ago with that PvE item. So this question is really just very open-ended. It's looking for our opinion from past to future progression of that stat in the game, how it integrates into PvP, and that's the specific angle they're going from here, where it can be wrinkled into builds, and how it affects, max HP and effective HP of that nature. Have you thought about max damage, that limit at all in PvP content or no?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think in certain builds, it definitely made sense. I think probably the most famous one would probably be Skahal. I think he was probably the biggest example where you could bring in that Ramu card in his secondary slot, and at least back when he was getting a lot of play, like, I don't know, it must have been like a year ago, maybe a little bit less. He would absolutely blow people up and he could take advantage of that extra 2,500 damage. And, if you look at the HP values, a lot of them are kind of sitting in that 12K zone where, you couldn't necessarily one-shot a lot of these, heavier bruisers or tanks, and that enabled him to do so in some cases. So, there's certain builds now that it kind of makes sense, but we haven't seen that effect on any of the job cards. And to be honest, I'm not sure if we ever will, at least, anytime soon. So it's you're more looking at your passives, I think, in trust stones and things like that to kind of, break that cap.
Yeah, you're right, Skahal, where that Ramu vision card, the lightning effect, was that max damage up, and he was one that could hit that damage cap, and there was a scenario where you actually could tank bust and maybe one-shot tanks that if you caught them off guard with that in peril. I do think it could be something that maybe Gumi wrinkles in to some of these items. I agree, vision cards, very unlikely, unless it'd be like a unit bestowed effect, maybe, but I have seen opportunities. I think of like Addison Ray, where I remember there's been a couple times where I did damage cap with her. But there's a very interesting threshold here where you're right. There are a fair amount of characters and tanks at the minimum, that can get to like 15 to 17,000 HP. That max damage in its current form can't one-shot them. Not that you ever really would. Tanks really don't have that fragility per se. So I don't think it'll ever have a place necessarily in PvP. But I could see some cases maybe for like, oh, I don't even. No, I don't. I can't imagine a scenario where a Truststone passive of 1,000 damage limit up would be superior than like anything else you put on a Truststone passive.
I mean, obviously for PvE, there's lots that you can do with it. I am kind of wondering. There's still a couple elements at the moment that don't have their own card, which is Dark and Earth. And they are purely reliant on the two-headed dragon and then the Mind Flayer card. So I hope that at some point Gumi will release their own mono elements, if they're going to continue with the guild raid stuff. Outside of that, I have enjoyed kind of some of these new items like that winter item we were just looking at that kind of enable you to even get higher than that normal Truststone passive. So from a PvE perspective, it's as relevant as ever.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll kind of slightly walk back what I was saying about PvP. It's just very niche. I think of the Helen of the Black Rose limit break. I've seen her damage cap pretty easily on some units that weren't prepared with that magic apparel. And sure, if you threw an extra 1,000 damage limit up, but even then you might just throw the Wizard Rod on her, which I think also has the max damage, if I recall.
Yeah, I think that was the other one I was thinking about earlier.
Yeah, so like
Pretty sure that has 2,000 cap on it.
that's what I thought. So even from like that perspective, we're already seeing max damage wrinkled into it. I don't know if you would see it more than that, which it's still worth something, but
Definitely not a first priority by any means.
no, no. But it is an intriguing question because you're right. As health pools continue to climb, damage caps are going to go with it. They knew that years ago, and they added damage limit on the tree themselves. I could easily see something like that where 5th anniversary when we get 160 units. There's another max damage limit note on them.
Yeah, yeah, another 2,000 node in the whatever tree they were going up to in 2025. We'll see.
Yeah, that'll be the next reincarnation. They'll add a max damage slot for it as a stat.
Episode 100 of the Leonis report.
Right? Oh my god. And the last question here, this is one that I think was asked a while ago that actually prompted us to do a TMR tier list. And we'll probably revisit that soon. I honestly don't think a lot of it's changed because, since 3rd anniversary, conceptually speaking, TMRs are kind of in the same spot. But the question, how much less relevant have TMRs become, if at all? We think they have. And what do you see as the next step of power creep for TMRs? And yeah, I'll kind of let you take the floor for starting that off if you want.
I mean, in terms of like all of the units since the 3rd anniversary and even before that, to be honest, most of them have built into their kits really 2 buffs that they need to get online that to be their most effective. It's really more the exception to the rule when if you look at a character like Vivi who maybe only has 1 buff that they really care about, and then they can go into hasting or maybe look at a TMR. But most of the time, they're more like Raph that we were looking at earlier, 2 really important buffs for them to kind of, do what they want to do. So that really doesn't leave you in auto PvP much room to look at a TMR beyond that. You're really looking at a stat stick at that point. I think that whether they're less relevant, I think overall, yes, but there's still cases where they are very important. When you look at, I'd say most often to manipulate movements in the AI in terms of maybe you can put a certain TMR onto somebody that changes the movement in such a way that it enables your team to do something different. I was looking at it just today for Galzak or other units to get from that slot 3. Can I get them some to sit in that slot and move to the middle and to use a certain buff? So I think that's probably where it's most relevant right now.
100% agreed, right? There's been enough ability power creep that most TMR abilities aren't better than the abilities the characters already have themselves. If anything, it's become a stat stick to min-max some stats with the trust stones, notably agility. Giving free agility that can stack with the agility stones is one of the most popular setups we see in top end PvP. To your point about movement, that the unique movement, where if it's a diamond shape, I know I was just talking about the Winter Raft TMR, which is kind of like this small 2 square range, which when I see like maybe you put a bow tie on her, have her use that on a unit, then the teammate buffs, like you can get some creative stuff there that I still think that's the biggest upside. But yeah, they're definitely not as relevant. But I do see some power creep options. Have you ever given any thought about what the next step of power creep might be for the TMRs?
So I think we've seen a little bit of it happening already where we're seeing more and more TMRs have multiple effects coming in. You're not getting like a singular effect. More and more it's been multiple. You look at maybe Zidane's TMR, for example, he's getting a barrier and accuracy. So I think that we're going to continue to see that. I think it's standard now at this point. The majority of TMRs are 2 casts. So in terms of what else they could do, I think it's you just layer on effects that's the only way that it's going to make it more attractive than I think some of the inbuilt buffs. There are certain, even to that though, there are some exceptions. Of course, any haste TMR is still a premium one.
Yep.
Any healing TMR, also a premium one. So re-raise, or if they ever add any courage TMR, also premium ones.
Yep.
But outside of that, I think they're somewhat mundane compared to the buffs that are coming in on new units.
Yep. No, I'm with you. In terms of the next step of the power creep, could go 3 ways in my opinion. The first, exactly as you said, they keep bloating the TMR effects in the hopes that they become competitive with what current abilities are. That's definitely one way to do it. The second one that they have not really done yet, but I could see them doing, if you look at really any weapon TMR in the game, almost all of them, or not all of them, that's an exaggeration, many of them have a permanent effect on them. I'll share the screen real quick. A lot of the weapons in particular have permanent effects. They're not abilities. And so I could see maybe a TMR coming in that has an ability and it has some kind of effect. So for instance, the Crimson Rapier is a permanent 8% slash res. The Miraga TMR is an initial AP 25. The Musketeer is a decreased chance of being targeted of 6. That I could see a form of power creep being that they add in these passive effects in addition to an ability so that you get something out of the TMR even if it's not being used. That's probably my like stat power creep if I had to guess where they could go next. But ability wise, the only other thing, and this is super out of the box, would be if they like introduce some kind of mechanic that like I don't even know how you would do it, but like something like where if you use a or your first time you attack, your TMR activates before you attack. Like that's the trigger. And it doesn't count as an ability usage. I'm sorry, it counts as an ability usage, but it doesn't count as a turn. That like when you go to attack someone, that's the AI trigger that goes, all right, activate the TMR buffs. And that way it's a way to like apply the buffs without wasting a full turn. There'd probably be a ton of spaghetti code going around that and like unintended effects of like overlapping current buffs with TMR buffs. But if they wanted people to encourage the use of the abilities, they got to find a way to make the abilities economical in the turn rotation.
I think both of those are great ideas. So yeah, I think those are good ways that they could go for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that.
Definitely. So, yeah, but that's all we have for now. Obviously, a lot to cover between all the winter holiday stuff. We have Trials of Reckoning coming next week, which we'll probably do a dive on that accessory, and we'll look at all the units. Hopefully, the bonus units aren't anything too painful to use into that content. We likely have Young Eld coming out next week, per the timeline, if I recall correct.
Yeah, we should be getting Eld and his vision card, I think, in the same week. So it's that'll be a fun week too.
Yeah, right on, right on. So a lot of good stuff to still cover coming up, and we'll look forward to that live stream next Wednesday to go over the year in review. We'll obviously keep highlighting that for you guys, but that's it for now. Any other thoughts before we sign off?
I don't think so. So I hope everybody has a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and we will see you on the live stream next week.
Absolutely can't wait. Have a good night, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.